So today I watched Ballerina. Not this ballerina, but from the world of John Wick Ballerina. This is directed by Len Wiseman, starring Ana de Armas, Keanu Reeves, obviously, Norman Reedus, Ian McShane, and others. So this is the latest addition to the John Wick franchise. This film takes place somewhere in amongst the first four John Wick films. It is not one that follows up John Wick 4. It is somewhere in the timeline of the first four John Wicks. So the basic plot of this movie is that this little girl gets taken in by the Ruska Roma, the Russian organized crime group in the John Wick world. She gets taken in as a little girl after the death of her father, and she grows up in this criminal organization, becomes an accomplished fighter and assassin, essentially, and then she comes to find out who the people responsible for her father's death are, and she goes after them with all of her newly acquired skills. The first thing I'll say about this movie is that it is extremely entertaining. I'm usually somebody who likes a deep, pensive movie that really has something to say, and I think this movie does have something to say, but it's definitely not a deep movie. The John Wick universe really kind of sits in this place where it's nothing deep, it's nothing complicated, but it's done very well. In my view, the John Wick movies, first and foremost, are showcases of stunts, fight choreography, and vibe. And Ballerina, for the most part, kind of stays in this pocket. Again, the story of her seeking vengeance on her father's behalf is fairly standard fare for John Wick and for just revenge films in general. I think the one conceptual thread that runs through the movie would be something like, you have the power and ability to determine what you do with your life, and fate does not have to decide that for you. It's not a deterministic world. You have free will and free choice to make your way in the world. I think that is one of the messages of the film, I would say, and fair enough, I can get behind that message. But that message isn't super deeply explored. It's just kind of a thematic thing that is throughout the film that adds a nice little cap to what the movie is trying to do. For the most part, though, again, this movie is just a fantastic showcase of action movie goodness. There's a lot of stunts, there's a lot of explosions, gunfire, there's a lot of fight choreography. I had heard in some interviews that her fighting style, took a little bit of inspiration from dance and being a ballerina, because that's the character lore of who this is. And I thought that was cool, but I just wasn't seeing that in the trailers. And I was very pleasantly surprised when I watched the film. She, I think, had her own fighting style. She was not so expert that she just flawlessly dealt with every foe. I mean, she got beat up. Her fighting style includes using a lot of what is around her, so picking up objects, using them in creative ways. She also uses a fair amount of explosives and fire. In this movie, she uses grenades and mines a lot. She uses a flamethrower, which was pretty sick. The stunts, the choreography, the effects were really, really well done. It was just a really entertaining movie to watch. I have maybe a couple criticisms that I could put out there for this movie, though it was a really enjoyable experience. There's a couple things that I'll nitpick at. So because we've had four John Wick films prior to this, in which we become familiar with the world and some of the characters and how things work, it just wasn't as fresh. Ballerina, I think, maybe could have used a little bit of creativity to just expand our view of the John Wick world, or to help us see new elements of it that are maybe exciting and new. Sometimes it seemed like, ooh, that would have been cool if it was novel, but we've seen that in other John Wick movies, so it's not quite as interesting. It wasn't bad in that way. I just wish there was maybe a little bit more care taken to give us some new little tidbits in this world that would have made it more engaging and even more enjoyable. The second criticism that I have for this film is I feel like they took it a little more seriously than the other four John Wick movies. There's this weird quirky humor in the previous four John Wick movies where it's like almost hyper violent and gory, but you have just the very kind of simple humor of John Wick, and the plot is so simple that like a child could grasp it. You know what I mean? It's not a complex plot. Someone killed John Wick's puppy, so he's mad now. And, he doesn't have a lot to say. He's a man of few words. This movie, I feel like they took their story and their characters maybe a little more seriously. Though I think that maybe worked in some places, it also fell flat in a few places, because it's just like, at the very base level, these movies are very simple and very kind of outlandish. Did it take itself too seriously? I don't think so. It definitely took itself more seriously than the previous four John Wick movies. At times, I felt like it flirted on the line of maybe taking itself too seriously and kind of losing the charm that the John Wicks have in their simplicity and in their kind of weird, quirky humor. But other than those two criticisms, this was a really enjoyable movie. I had a great time watching it in theaters. Ana de Armas, I think, was a really good casting choice for this movie. I really like her for some reason. I don't know what exactly it is about her, but I think she's just a very likable actress. In movies like Knives Out and Blade Runner 2049, she just plays characters that are endearing in some way. And I feel like that was a good choice for this character because you have a little more empathy and you feel tied to her a little more just because of the kind of person that she presents herself as. And while talking casting, I also really appreciated that Keanu Reeves was in this and that he wasn't just in it for like a brief 10-second scene. He has a couple of little extended scenes. I would say maybe in total he's in the movie maybe 5-10 minutes. So it's not a lot, but I appreciate that they didn't just use his face as a selling point. Honestly, I think I would give this movie a 4 out of 5 stars. I don't think it's quite as good as the first 4 John Wicks, but it's pretty darn close. I mean, in my opinion, it has all the John Wick action that you want, and it's just a really entertaining time. So I would highly recommend you go see this in theaters if you haven't already. And thanks for hanging out with me for a few minutes. I'll see you in the next one.